Thank you for tuning in to another episode of WGC Fits. Today, we're going to be discussing the difference of how shaft length, let's say in a driver, like we did in this instance, can affect input, because that is important. And then that input obviously can affect what some of the measured output looks like.
Yes.
Okay? So we did all of these tests are with the Titleist GT3 driver. They are all set to the same setting, which was B1 and H1. Mm-hmm. And it is all in the same shaft.
Hazardous Black 7.
Yep, Hazardous Black 6.5 70 Gen 5. We have a 44.5 inch, a 45 inch, and a 45.5 inch shaft.
Yes, we do.
Now, the other thing that's very interesting about this is these shafts at different lengths are going to feel slightly different.
Very different.
And that is where we could talk to Ian about kind of what some of his experiences were. So the first thing we're going to look at is going to be the 44.5 inch ones.
The little short guy.
The little short guy.
Let's backtrack this though, because some companies have different standard lengths, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Standard length for a driver typically can range anywhere from 45 and a quarter up to 45 and 3/4.
Yes.
And it would all depend on, again, what aspect of kind of category of shaft you're going in, dependent on that company.
Correct.
So there is no such thing as standard.
No.
However, from a fitting perspective, essentially how I kind of look at it is where we have to go from 45.5, because that's an average, to get you into the window where we start to see that efficient output. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So the length of the shaft can affect the feel. It affects the swing weight. It affects the stiffness of the shaft. And those things can affect what your input looks like.
As much as like impact location.
Correct.
Can vary.
Hugely. Impact location is one of the first things that you're going to see probably has a little bit of a variance, right?
Yes.
Now, take into account, Ian's a pretty good player. He plays at what's your handicap right now?
Good.
There we go. It's a good, positive handicap. And what that means is, you know, he's in pretty in tune with what he's doing, right? And you're still going to see that there's some variance here because of the club that we set up for him.
Yes.
So, first ones, we have a 45.5 inch driver. Now let's start to just look at what we are. Just fairly central location in terms of strike.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
A little
right?
getting used to it.
Again, because you play them a little longer. But
Yeah.
again, that's not, I wouldn't be upset at that in a fitting window,
No.
right? Not the worst.
What surprised me was the average height.
Correct.
Much lower.
And that's kind of one of the things we're going to talk about, right? With a shorter shaft, obviously the lever is going to be a little lower, right? Or a little smaller, I should say.
Yes.
How does that affect what's going on? We're going to see. So your club speed was 120.1. Smash factor, 1.48.
Also
Great.
fine.
Ball speed, this is the first one we're really going to want to measure, 177.8. Okay?
Is that bad?
Keep that in mind. No,
Okay.
it's not bad. Just keep it in mind. Dynamic loft, 9.5. Launch, 8.6. Peak height at 70. Carry, 291.
Expected.
Angle of attack, 1.3 up.
All good.
Okay? So, pretty good, right? Again, I don't have anything bad to say, you know, regardless. We're just doing a little comparison.
Yes.
Next, we're going to look at 45 inches. So, we see strike a little bit different. We see
What I'm
smash
used
factor.
to. What I'm
It is.
used to.
This is more or less kind of what I expect to see when we're doing a fitting.
I play a 45 and 1/4.
Correct. And you typically, if you got to miss, it's a little on the inside.
It's always on
Yep.
the heel.
So let's look at what this did for delivery. Speed goes up, 121.6. Smash factor goes down a hair, 147. Ball speed, I want to
up
say
2
that's
miles an
up,
hour.
yeah, up a little bit,
1 mile an hour.
179. Dynamic loft actually increased a touch.
Yes, it did.
Right, 9.5 up to 11.2.
Even though angle of attack went lower.
Angle of attack went lower, but your dynamic loft was also different, right? 9.5 versus 11.2.
Okay.
Peak height significantly up, carry significantly up, right? Now talk about the differences that you felt between 45 and 44.5.
It felt the shorter one felt stiffer,
Slightly stiffer.
just because there's less shaft. Correct.
Correct, yeah. And when you butt trim anything, you actually are going, it's not as much as it would be if you were going to tip trim it.
Yeah.
But when you butt trim it or trim it by the grip, it is going to be effectively a little stiffer, especially in your handle, right? So that's the first thing that affects the feel of what's going on. Also, it changes swing weight a little bit. right? And they're gonna feel a little bit different in that swing weight perspective. Typically,
The
a
shorter,
little
the
lighter,
lighter.
or a little shorter is equivalent to saying it's going to be a little bit lighter from a feel perspective as well. Those things are what Ian feels when he's swinging, greatly affect what the delivery looks like, and we've seen that, right? A little bit longer club, a little bit longer lever, technically slightly softer, right? And in that, ball speed goes up, club speed goes up, we're launching the ball higher, we have a way higher ball flight,
Correct.
and a better carry, right?
think-
And angle of attack was slightly adjusted.
I think with the shorter one, I saw it coming out low, and I tried to get that angle of attack almost up one, just
I'm
to
sure
get
you
it
did.
to normal,
Yeah, no, I'm
subconsciously.
sure you did. That was 100% a thing. And it also needs to be said, this is the one that you're probably the most familiar with, this length.
This length, yes.
Okay, let's look at the next. 45 and a half now. So club speed up again.
Maybe I need to go to 45 and a half.
Well, this is the interesting part of it. Ball speed tremendously up, right? Smash factor up. Launch angle up. Dynamic loft relatively the same. Attack angle up.
Height went
Peak height
up.
up. Carry up. And strike actually up a little bit.
I like that strike.
It's a very good strike.
We're lengthening my driver.
We might have to slightly adjust that. But again, it goes to show there really is. We're talking about half-inch increments here, guys, and that really is a pretty good measurable difference.
Yes.
And you weren't expecting maybe to see that much difference, were you?
I know. Well, here, go back to the short one. So, well, I'm going to take the mic real quick. But the carry, every half inch went up by 10 yards, which I think is hilarious. But same thing with height. It went up 20 feet every half inch.
And your ball speed went up by around 2-3 miles an
2-3
hour.
miles an hour every half inch.
Longer lever, there's more potential for distance and speed if we maintain strike.
Yeah.
If strike is something that you're struggling with, you're actually, you kind of have the reverse, right? If it's harder to strike when it's longer, that means that if we get you more in the center with a shorter club, ball speed's going to go up. Ball
Yeah.
speed's going to go up by approximately 12 to 15%. And that's far greater than what it would be if simply our swing speed increases.
Yeah.
Because your swing speed is definitely going to go up with a longer club.
Yeah.
Definitely going to go down with a shorter club. If you're not a very good player, right, you can't always control that strike as well.
Yeah.
I'm a great example of that. I prefer a slightly shorter driver because it definitely makes me feel a little more confident in my ability to strike it.
Even though I hit the middle on this longer club,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was almost too soft, and I was, and
Well,
you
that
can
was
tell
the
by
other
the
thing that's interesting.
dispersion.
You said you didn't like the way this felt.
No,
And you did have a hard time
controlling
it, right?
Go to dispersion.
You've got a little bit right and left dispersion with the 45 and a half.
Yeah.
Or you want to go to the dispersion screen? Go to that.
Here. Like the other two drivers were perfect.
Yeah.
It's just the other one I couldn't figure out. Like
And-
this thing
and
was
this
almost
is the difference
too whippy.
between playability and not. Like I said, they
Yeah.
feel different. Half-inch increment, same exact shaft, definitely going to feel different.
Yeah.
Right.
It's where
And
almost-
well, I was going to say a 6.5 70-gram hazardous black feels whippy. That's a silly thing to say, but I know exactly
Compared
what
to
you're
the
talking
shorter
about.
one.
Exactly, and I know exactly what you're talking about because that's why I don't like the feeling of a longer kind of driver
That's
shaft.
why you like to tip everything.
A lot. Yeah. It just feels better.
So if I still want to get the club speed and the height and everything of a longer shaft,
Mm-hmm.
would I almost have to go tip this thing? And maybe go a little stiffer profile?
I have found that tipping a shorter shaft allows me to feel like it just feels a little bit more stable the whole way through the profile.
I'm saying stiff or tip a longer shaft.
Tipping a longer shaft will tighten up the bottom of it, yes.
Okay.
If you go longer and you tip it, it will make it feel more rigid at the bottom, and
is
that could
good.
maintain the best of both worlds kind of scenario.
Yeah.
The strike, or I should say the input benefit from a feel perspective of the longer lever, right? But then also the dispersion benefit of the short shaft.
Yeah.
You know? So pretty good. Any other questions about it?
No, that was good.
It's an interesting thing for you guys to test. Length is definitely something that every fitter should kind of talk to you about. So definitely kind of make sure when you're doing your fittings, this is a question that you bring up. I know when I'm doing fittings, I typically like to try at least 1 or 2 different lengths for the guys. Again, based on what that input is telling me. So most important thing, make sure you get what works for you. Thanks for checking out the video. Please like and subscribe. If you guys have any questions or comments, please let us know in the comments. We'll see you next time.